Thank you for joining us today. My name is Derek Townsend and I'm a Cloud Solutions Architect with TierPoint. Today I'm going to be talking about modernizing across Azure and AWS, and we are going to also review a real-world healthcare case study. Let's get started. Here's our agenda for today. I'm going to first share with you some findings from a recent TierPoint report, the 2030 IT Blueprint, how mid-size organizations are redefining modernization. Then we will take a look at the 5 pillars of next-generation IT tools. Beyond that, we'll explore some common modernization barriers that many companies run up against, as well as take a look at the real-world healthcare modernization case study that we have provided. And then we'll end by looking ahead at some modernization strategies we anticipate over the next 5 years. We surveyed executives across industries, healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, to understand how they're using public cloud tools. The findings paint a clear picture. Hybrid is now the standard operating model. AI is shaping infrastructure, and financial control is still the hardest problem to solve. When we talk about next generation IT tools, we're really talking about how organizations are modernizing around 5 core pillars that connect Azure and AWS. The first is automation and artificial intelligence. Tools like Azure OpenAI and AWS Bedrock are transforming how we build and deliver services by adding intelligence into every workflow. Next, unified management. Both Azure Arc and AWS Systems Manager provide a single control plane across on-prem, edge, and public cloud, which is essential as hybrid becomes the default. Hybrid infrastructure is about bringing cloud capabilities closer to where the data lives. Azure Local and AWS Outposts let you run workloads locally with the same cloud experience. In security and zero trust, platforms like Entra ID, Sentinel, IAM, and GuardDuty unify identity, monitoring, and response across environments. Finally, FinOps and governance tools like Azure Cost Management and AWS Budgets bring financial visibility and accountability to the cloud. Together, these categories define what next-gen IT looks like. Smarter, more secure, hybrid by design, and financially controlled. 66% of respondents now operate hybrid environments. The cloud conversation has evolved from should we migrate to how do we manage across environments. Regulatory and latency requirements keep key workloads close to the user, while Azure Local and AWS Outposts extend cloud services into data centers everywhere. Azure Arc and Systems Manager provide unified visibility, one control plane for everything from edge to the cloud. Ultimately, companies are looking for performance, compliance, and agility, and having a hybrid configuration helps to deliver that. More than half of organizations are actively funding AI projects, and nearly as many are upgrading the infrastructure to support them. On the Azure side, OpenAI Service and Synapse Analytics helps customers turn data into predictions and automation. On AWS, Bedrock and Athena deliver generative AI and analytics pipelines at scale. AI isn't a standalone initiative anymore. It's woven into every modernization plan. When we asked executives what they're focusing modernization efforts on, 3 themes clearly rose to the top: AI, infrastructure, and security. AI and automation led at 51%, showing that organizations aren't waiting to explore machine learning. They're actively investing to make operations smarter and faster. Close behind is infrastructure modernization at 46%. Many are upgrading legacy systems with cloud-native platforms like Azure Local and AWS Outposts, blending on-prem performance with cloud scalability. Right alongside that, security at 45%. proving that innovation can't come at the expense of protection. Companies are prioritizing zero trust models with Entra ID, Sentinel, IAM, and Guard Duty in AWS. What's interesting is that these priorities overlap. Modernization isn't one project, it's a multi-track journey to migrate, automate, and secure all at once. When we look at modernization barriers, the first and biggest one leaders identified is technical feasibility. Simply put, whether modernization can be done safely, practically, and without disruption. Nearly half of decision makers said this is their top filter before approving new initiatives. Ambition alone doesn't drive transformation. Feasibility and compliance do. That's why pilots play such a key role. Successful pilots balance return on investment, performance, and compliance and produce tangible outcomes like reference architectures, deployment templates, and migration blueprints. Both Azure and AWS provide frameworks that help overcome this barrier. Azure landing zones, bicep, and policy on one side, and AWS control tower, cloud formation, and the well-architected framework on the other. The goal is to prove that modernization isn't just possible, it's repeatable, secure, and aligned with business goals. The second major barrier identified in our survey is the skills gap, and it's impacting every major cloud discipline. At the top of the list, 78% of respondents said they struggle with cloud operations. Simply having enough hands to manage hybrid and multi-cloud environments day to day. Security follows closely at 72%, where organizations face a shortage of professionals who understand zero trust and identity-driven protection. Automation at 65% shows that while tools like Azure Arc and AWS Systems Manager exist, teams often lack the expertise to implement them effectively. And even FinOps at 58% is a growing concern, proving that cost management and governance are specialized skill sets in themselves. This is exactly where managed services and automation play a role. TierPoint extends these tools with 24/7 experience so customers can focus on innovation and not resource constraints. Financial control remains a major barrier. IT leaders struggle with unpredictable spend, weak tagging, and decentralized purchasing. Azure Cost Management and Advisor and AWS Budgets plus Cost Explorer give transparency, but few companies enforce them consistently. Establishing a FinOps framework and automating policies with Azure Policy or AWS Control Tower turns visibility into control. Final major barrier identified in our survey is security complexity, and it remains the top modernization priority. Organizations told us that security isn't about lacking tools, it's about managing too many of them. They face multiple clouds with siloed controls, shadow IT, inconsistent identity policies, and fragmented visibility. Azure solves this through an integrated security framework that unifies identity, protection, and governance. Azure AD centralizes authentication and access control, while Defender for Cloud provides threat protection and compliance posture management. Defender XDR delivers end-to-end detection and response, and Key Vault secures credentials and secrets. When these services work together, they create a single source of truth for security posture, simplifying operations and reducing risk across hybrid environments. When we asked organizations about their disaster recovery practices, only 38% said they test DR regularly. And that's a real risk when downtime impacts revenue, compliance, and patient or customer services. The good news is that both cloud ecosystems have made DR simpler and more automated. Azure Site Recovery and AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery can continuously replicate workloads and orchestrate failover automatically into secure environments. In a hybrid setup, this means VMs running on Azure Local or AWS Outposts can fail over to public cloud regions seamlessly, keeping operations resilient even if a data center goes down. And this is true for running on pretty much any type of VM as well. As part of our managed services, TierPoint integrates these DR tools into runbooks, turning DR from a one-time test into a validated, repeatable routine that's monitored and improved over time. The result, true operational resilience, not just backup, but business continuity. Slide brings everything together, showing how next-generation IT tools from Azure and AWS integrate as layers across the modern hybrid environment. At the foundation, we have infrastructure, with Azure Virtual Machines and AWS EC2, the backbone for running traditional and modern workloads. Above that is automation, where Azure Automation and AWS Systems Manager simplify configuration, patching, and orchestration across distributed systems. Critical as hybrid becomes the default operating model. Then, AI and analytics tools such as Azure OpenAI and AWS Bedrock are shaping smarter operations and faster insights, embedding intelligence directly into enterprise workflows. And at the top, governance through Azure Policy and AWS Control Tower ensure that as environments scale, they stay compliant, secure, and financially controlled. These layers don't work in isolation. They operate as an integrated stack that connects cloud, edge, and on-prem, giving organizations flexibility and control without sacrificing consistency. This use case illustrates how hybrid cloud directly supports resilience in highly regulated industries like healthcare. In this example, the organization runs several hundred virtual machines on Azure Local hosted within a TierPoint data center, with disaster recovery to Azure East US through Azure Site Recovery. This ensures compliance, low latency, and high performance for clinical workloads while maintaining a seamless path to Azure. The key drivers here were regulatory compliance, predictable RTO and RPO, and limited in-house staff for managing DR. By pairing Azure Local with Arc Backup and Site Recovery, they gain unified management, automated failover, and full HIPAA alignment without maintaining a second physical site. It's a perfect example of hybrid resilience in action: compliant local compute, cloud scale protection, and operational continuity through Azure native tools, all delivered and managed under one framework. A growing part of modernization strategy now includes sustainability and governance, with 37% of organizations in our survey factoring sustainability directly into IT planning. Both Azure and AWS have made it easier to integrate environmental reporting into a day-to-day operations without adding new manual processes. On Azure, Emissions Insights within the Cost Management Portal gives visibility into carbon impact across subscriptions and resources, allowing teams to measure and optimize their footprint. On AWS, the Carbon Footprint tool provides the same transparency, breaking down emissions by service, geography, and usage patterns, and even projecting a path to 100% renewable energy. These integrations mean sustainability isn't an add-on or a separate workflow. It's built directly into the same dashboards used for cost and performance. This reinforces the broader theme of today's session. Modern IT tools, whether in Azure or AWS, are aligning business performance, financial control, and environmental responsibility into one unified operational model. When we asked IT leaders about their planning horizons, most are thinking in 1 to 5 year windows, with 39% focused on the 3 to 5 year range and another 34% looking just 1 to 2 years ahead. This tells us that organizations want flexibility over long-term lock-in. They're approaching modernization as a series of modular, iterative improvements rather than large one-time transformations. Both Azure and AWS are evolving to match that mindset, investing in AI-assisted operations and self-optimizing cloud services that can adapt automatically as environments scale. Over the next 5 years, we'll see the rise of autonomous operations, infrastructure that configures, secures, and optimizes itself. The takeaway: agility and modularity are becoming the defining characteristics of successful cloud strategies. and the organizations that master those two principles will lead the next wave of modernization. To wrap up, there are 5 major takeaways from our discussion. Hybrid is now the new normal. Cloud and on-prem work together by design. AI and automation are driving efficiency across every layer of IT. FinOps isn't a one-time project. It's a continuous practice for cost visibility and control. Zero trust is foundational. Identity and security have to be unified everywhere. And finally, platforms like Azure Local and AWS Outposts enable true hybrid readiness, delivering consistent operations from the data center to the cloud. Together, these principles define what next generation IT looks like: intelligent, secure, and adaptable. Everything we've covered today, from hybrid infrastructure to automation, FinOps, and security, depends on having the right partner to connect all the moving parts, and that's where TierPoint comes in. Our role is to help organizations assess, migrate, manage, and optimize their hybrid cloud environments. In the assess phase, we identify workloads, compliance requirements, and cost drivers. During migration, we leverage Azure and AWS best practices to ensure a seamless and secure transition. Once in the cloud, our management services handle automation, monitoring, DRaaS, and security governance, giving IT teams breathing room to focus on innovation. And finally, we continually optimize, applying FinOps discipline to keep environments efficient and cost-effective. TierPoint isn't just a service provider, we're a modernization partner helping organizations achieve agility, control, and resilience across every phase of their cloud journey. That wraps up today's session. Thank you all for joining and for taking the time to explore how next generation IT tools are reshaping modernization. If you'd like to go deeper, we can schedule an assessment to review your Azure or AWS environment and identify opportunities around automation, FinOps, or DRaaS. Feel free to reach out to me directly, Derek Townsend, Cloud Solutions Architect, at derek.townsend@tierpoint.com, or visit tierpoint.com to learn more. Thanks again for being part of the discussion, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.